It's incredible to notice how much of our experience is not just the raw content of the senses, like you're looking at a watch, you're looking at your house, you're looking at your partner or your friend. There is the raw content, which is, if it's a person, it's just a person, meaning the physicality of that person, right? How much of our experience is not just that, but an overlay of emotional pain and belief systems, memory, right? Emotional memory that is put on top of things. And so you're walking around in the world and you're not just looking at reality as it is, reality meaning physicality. Without you noticing, the ego is always overlaying, putting something on top of the raw content. And this is clouding judgment. This is numbing the senses and making them boring, right? Like when someone is at a park, their phone is more interesting than just looking at the grass and the trees and the sky and everything. So these overlays, you can think of layers and layers that are keeping you from seeing reality as it is. And part of reality is just the beauty of it, right? And so you can't really see it because of these overlays. So let me give you an example. For a lot of people, a very expensive watch has so many overlays. So again, you have the watch, which is a physical object made of materials. It could be solid gold and diamonds and rubies, whatever. It's just materials, right? But people don't buy watches. They want to say that the reason is because they just like it. That's usually not the reason. That's like the last reason for buying it. The number one reason is that the object in their mind has such a strong meaning. There is a belief system, right? And so whether it is an expensive watch, expensive car, expensive clothes, all of this stuff for pretty much all human beings has a very specific overlay. And the overlay is something like, this object proves that I'm special. This object proves, shows my status to other people. It shows that I'm important and that I have more value and worth than other people. All of these things. Of course, if you say this to someone, they're never going to admit it. They can't even see it for themselves. But the reason that they wear that watch is not only because they think it's beautiful. The truth is, a lot of the times, if you could just get rid of the overlay for that person and all of that meaning is gone, they might look at the watch and think, yeah, it looks okay, but I wouldn't even really care about this. I would never have bought this, because if you take away the meaning that I have in my mind, that whenever I walk around with this watch, I feel better than others. If you get rid of that, most people would say, yeah, I actually don't think I really care about this watch. Like it's meaningless to me. So I give you that example. There's other examples of like your job. So if you have a prestigious job, like a doctor or a professor, then the overlay, I forgot to say, with a job, again, the reality of the job is the physicality of it. So a professor walks into a classroom, he has to stand in front of a podium. He might, use a computer to project things, and he has to use a pen maybe to write certain things or grade papers. That's the reality of it. Where is the overlay? Well, the overlay is hidden, invisible, especially if the person is not aware and they can't observe themselves. The professor might feel at all times that he's superior to anyone that doesn't have a PhD, right? That doesn't have a prestigious job. And if he couldn't do that job anymore, maybe he'd feel depressed about himself because the job is giving him this boost, right? And so again, the overlay here is showing you how much we live in the mind, how stuck in the head we are, and how much illusion is a part of our daily experience all the time. I think the last one that I wrote this down on a piece of paper, was there's the watch, your job. I said, then the last one I think was relationships. So a really good example is your parents. So this is pretty much anyone, right? But your parents are just people, right? They're just flesh and bone and blood like me here. And so if there was no overlay, you would just see that they are just people doing their best with all their issues and things. But instead, the overlay with parents, there are layers upon layers upon layers of overlays. And the most common one, of course, is deep resentment. The deeper you go, you'll see that there's a deep hatred, right? And so when you are around your parents, the overlay creates this illusion, and you can't even see them physically with your eyes exactly as they are. Of course, your eyes are seeing them, but I've seen this change in myself. You can't really see them as they are. You see an image, a psychological image. If it's someone that hurt you a lot, their eyes, in your experience with the overlay, may look like evil eyes, or eyes that have no compassion, right? That is your overlay. They may have abused you. They may have done very horrible things. That is true. But if you're seeing evil in their eyes, right, this is what the ego doesn't want you to notice, is that is your overlay. You are literally processing everything through your brain and nobody else's brain. And so whatever you see is literally you. Yes, they might have been the sort of source of that. And so they are a part of it, but ultimately you can only experience yourself. So the point of this video was to show you that at all times we think we are living in reality when actually we are swimming and often drowning in illusion, because all it takes is for you to look at an object that has a lot of meaning for you, maybe memory, maybe somebody died, and you keep looking at it. For example, it could be a coffee mug that maybe was your father's and he's gone. And so in your mind, the coffee mug is now your father. And so you don't want to, lose it. You don't want to break it. But if you kind of practice this and you look at the object and you keep looking at it, well, first you'd have to sit with the memories or whatever is happening there. But once it's sort of gone, you would just keep staring at the coffee mug and notice that it's literally just a mug. It's made of ceramic or whatever it is, and it has no meaning. I was going to say something else. Whatever is not attached to past pain will pretty much not have an overlay. It could still have an overlay, but it's very hard. Like nature. A tree has never hurt you in the way that maybe your mother or your father hurt you, or husband, wife, whoever it is. And so that's why when you're in nature, you usually feel very calm, because there's nothing to trigger you, because the grass has never hurt you, the sky has never hurt you. People are the ones that have hurt us. And so if you walk in nature for a long time and you kind of focus on the senses, you may feel very meditative and extremely peaceful. And you are, in a way, getting a glimpse of a life without overlays, right? This is where people get very confused, and they often overestimate where they are on the path, and they think that they've become enlightened. But they may only feel enlightened when they're not around other people, and that shows you that you're very far from being free, right? And so I think it's incredible to see how many overlays there are. You can kind of live your life, if you want to do an experiment, and try to see that first there is the material, right? The physical aspect of anything that has no emotion, no meaning whatsoever. It is just there. The house that you live in, or the apartment, it is your home. The overlay could be a positive overlay, like this is my refuge. This is where I can finally relax and not feel unsafe. Or it could be the opposite. A woman that lives with her abusive husband and she can't leave. The house in her mind feels horrible, and it feels like a prison, right? It's interesting to see again. So if you want to do the experiment, look at whatever you're looking at, whether it's an object, a person, or a place. And at first, maybe notice that immediately when you look at it, the overlay is there. Lots of thoughts, beliefs, or emotions. Could be positive emotions or negative emotions. Then after a while, if you keep kind of looking at the object, notice how maybe the overlay eventually disappears, and you're looking at something that makes you feel nothing. It doesn't make you feel good, it doesn't make you feel bad. It is absolutely neutral. That's actually reality, right? It's just there. It's something that's just there. So the more overlays that you have, meaning the more unprocessed pain that you have, suppressed pain is all of the anger that you didn't fully feel and release in your nervous system. Every single time you were disrespected as a child, maybe as a toddler or a baby, you were disrespected, you were punished, you were frightened from the reactions of your parents or whoever it was. And so that's a whole lot of fear registered in the nervous system. It didn't go anywhere. It was just too much for a child to process. And so it's stored in the subconscious. And an ocean of tears for having gone through such a difficult time that you can't even remember anymore, because that's how suppression works. You may say, my childhood was okay, but if you actually went back, which is what awakening is all about, you go back emotionally. It's like emotional time travel. And the intensity gets bigger and bigger and bigger, which means you're getting closer and closer to the intensity of being that 3-year-old. It was like a nightmare, actually, a lot of the times. Like the worst nightmare that you could ever imagine. But it was suppressed and suppressed and suppressed until you forget about it and you forget the intensity. This is where almost all adults are. The intensity is forgotten. And so when a child is terrorized with maybe an animal, right? An animal is coming towards them and they're screaming and they're so terrified. The adults can't relate and they think children are silly. It's because the intensity that a child feels fear is unimaginable to most adults. Unimaginable. And so that's what suppression does. And so we have a reservoir, if you want to imagine, of all of this suppressed pain. And the overlays come from the suppressed pain. So the more that someone has been neglected and abused, the more overlays they will have. And overlays are distortions. They are distortions. If you had no distortions, you would be what they call enlightened, right? Absolutely empty of all suppressed pain. Not because you meditated it away, not because you kept concentrating on something and then it disappeared. No. Genuine enlightenment can only happen by you facing and facing and facing and facing. Most people don't want to do this because it's awful and it feels infinite, but it's definitely not. And so someone that is very violent, someone that, you know, will easily punch someone over something small, that is someone that has been so abused that they're living in a reality within themselves that they see life and they see everywhere that they go and humans as mortally dangerous. At any moment, somebody can kill me because everybody wants to hurt me. For example, that's an overlay, right? It might not be very relatable because most people, I think, watching this video are not criminals or not people, you know, out there doing this sort of thing. But if you bring it down a little bit, some overlays are women that have been abused by men, probably starting with their father. The father neglected them, made fun of their emotions, rejected them. The father was aggressive. And then maybe there were other males in a woman's life that continue to do the same. And so the overlay for that woman is that when she sees any man, she doesn't like men in general. She hates men, right? And it makes sense because of all the abuse. And so that's an overlay. The same thing for a man. I have a lot of that looks at women and feels a lot of hatred and a lot of sexual objectification, which is hatred. So it's very interesting to see that. Usually when there's a lot of abuse, like I just said, the combination of overlays is always fear and hatred. So it's not, I don't think it's exclusive, like you can only, they're kind of, you know, they're together. And so men that objectify women, they both hate them, but they also fear them. And that's the reason for the objectification, because it distances you from the woman. It keeps them at arm's length, and therefore you can't be hurt by them, right? And so if a man only wants to use women for sex, there's a whole lot of overlays there. Fear and hatred of women, and they can't get rid of their sexual attraction, and so that's the only thing that they want to extract from the woman. They don't want to get close to the woman because the last time that they were close to a woman, probably their mother, they were deeply betrayed. and deeply hurt and neglected. And so that's kind of the overlay that's in the brain. Also interesting is to notice that, so the first step is to become aware of the overlays, right? So most people have no idea that there are overlays. They think that they're just seeing reality, right? Which is very scary. They're seeing a dream in the mind, but it's very scary. So people that walk around, for example, who are racist and they believe the belief system and the emotional pain that comes up, which is hatred. And when they look at someone, let's say a white person looks at someone that's not white and they have this overlay, they actually believe that what they're experiencing is with the other person. This is when the overlay is like complete. And therefore, when they look at the person and they experience something, they look at the person and they experience something, they think that this is all just one thing. So the racism and the negative feelings are actually, this is the illusion. The person is the source of this, because when I look at them, I have this experience. Well, no, the source is the hatred that's just sitting there. And for whatever reason, your psyche has chosen to use this to not only bring up the hatred, but also to make you feel better about another overlay that deep in your psyche you feel worthless. Everybody has this, but it's very buried in the subconscious. So when you feel superior to someone, you push down, you kind of do this, I don't want to feel that worthlessness. I'd rather dream that my skin color makes me superior. That feels much, much more comfortable, right? Let me think of other examples or anything else I could say. Overlays. Oh, I was saying, so first it is to become aware of overlays. And when you become aware of them, the tendency of the ego at that stage is to then judge you for having this stuff. So when I say racism, when I say all of these negative things, I have seen all of these things within me, and they still exist because there's basically just hatred, and hatred will hate anything, basically. Once you go deep enough, I was never someone that was homophobic, right? That was never a part of me. I didn't really care. And so when you go deeper and deeper and deeper, and then there's no resistance to seeing anything anymore, then you'll notice that you're everything that you thought you weren't. So in my mind, I could be racist. In my mind, I could be homophobic. I could be every single thing, because there's basically hatred, and then the hatred puts something in front of the hatred, and the hatred will simply hate it. Put a plant, I hate you. You know, a person of an Asian person, a black person, a gay person, straight person, it doesn't matter who it is, I hate it, because that's what hatred does, right? So these overlays, they suck the beauty out of life. And think about how crazy this is. And then as you go deeper and deeper into the dream, because you're being neglected and abused, eventually you don't even know that there are overlays. And so you live in this crazy reality where you are walking around and everything has a very strong meaning to you. It's very serious. And you argue with people and you fight with people and you hurt people because of overlays, right? Oftentimes, people are not really doing anything, but the overlay is so strong that someone could say something that could be very neutral, and your overlay says, they're insulting me. And then you start an argument, and it's like in reality they weren't insulting you, they were saying something else. So I guess that's the video, and I would suggest that you do an experiment and try to find the overlays in your experience. Use the first thing that I said, which is try to keep coming back to the physicality of the thing. So you might be walking around and you go into a public, bathroom, and there's somebody cleaning. Was there an overlay for a second that maybe was very quick, and you judged that person and thought, I'm better than them because I don't have this job, I have a much better job? Well, there are two overlays about someone that has that job and an overlay about your job. Those two jobs are literally physical acts. The person is in the bathroom maybe with a mop doing this and cleaning the floor. That's all there is. Now, in the person's mind that's doing that job, they might have an overlay of, this makes me a pathetic person because I don't have a job that requires going to university. That's their overlay. You are judging them, that's your overlay. If there were no overlays in your experience, well, first you would feel infinite peace, which, as Jesus, well, what's the thing that is in the Bible? A peace that passes all understanding. You'd be experiencing that. And reality would be, compared to having so many overlays, reality would just be so beautiful all the time for no reason, right? Like this park here and these trees and everything is just so gorgeous, right? I'm speaking from experience. I've released so much pain that so many overlays are gone, but there's still so many overlays. It's unbelievable when you're brutally honest with yourself. And so it's a mixture of the peace that passes all understanding with some triggers, with some, the voice still talking and everything. So I hope that this video made how the ego operates all the time in your life, and you just can't see it because it's invisible. So yeah, thanks for listening.